Hello, thoughtful Libra. As July 8 and 9 unfold, you may notice a quieter kind of turning point taking shape. Some seasons announce themselves through dramatic events, while others begin with a gentle realization that something inside you has already started to shift. If you've been looking for certainty, these days may offer something even more meaningful, a growing sense that the pieces of your life are beginning to settle into a clearer pattern. Maybe that's why this message caught your attention, not because fate demanded it, but because something within you recognized that this is a good moment to pause and listen. Have you ever looked back and realized that the periods that changed you the most rarely arrived with fanfare? They often began with a small feeling you almost ignored, a quiet thought that refused to leave, or a new perspective that slowly made everything else easier to understand. If that feels familiar, stay with me. This reflection isn't about predicting your future as much as it is about helping you notice what has already begun to unfold beneath the surface. Mid-year has a way of inviting honest evaluation. It encourages you to step back from constant motion, look at the path you've already walked, and ask yourself what truly deserves your energy as you move into the months ahead. During July 8 and 9, the sky seems to encourage that kind of thoughtful attention. Rather than searching for dramatic signs, you may find greater meaning in the quiet moments, a conversation that leaves you feeling lighter, a decision that suddenly feels less complicated, or a sense of calm that replaces questions you've carried for longer than you realized. Sometimes clarity arrives the way morning mist slowly lifts, revealing a path that was there all along. What begins to emerge may be experienced in three meaningful ways. The first is a deeper connection with yourself, where your own values become easier to hear than outside expectations. The second is through relationships that feel more genuine, where mutual understanding matters more than perfect words. The third is in the practical areas of life, as opportunities, recognition, or steady progress begin reflecting the confidence you've been quietly building within yourself. Libra, you often give your attention to keeping harmony around you, and in doing so, it's easy to overlook your own needs. These days invite you to restore that balance by making space for your own voice as well. This isn't about earning good things through endless effort. It's about recognizing that when you stop questioning your worth, you're often better able to recognize opportunities that have been patiently waiting for your attention. Before we explore these themes more deeply, I simply want to thank you for sharing this moment. Your reflections and conversations help create a thoughtful community where people can explore these ideas together. If this message already resonates with you, I'd love to hear from you in the comments. You might write, "I'm ready to welcome greater clarity," or simply, "This message arrived at the right time." Sometimes putting those words into the world is less about making a declaration and more about acknowledging the direction your heart is already beginning to take. As we continue, I invite you to stay curious. By the time we've finished exploring these reflections, my hope isn't that you'll feel you've been given every answer. It's that you'll recognize something even more valuable. The quiet confidence that comes from trusting yourself a little more than you did before. So tell me, what was happening in your life when you decided to press play today? Let's begin. Sometimes the most important realizations don't announce themselves with dramatic signs. They arrive quietly, the way early morning light gradually fills a room until you suddenly notice details that were always there. As July 8 and 9 unfold, you may find yourself entering one of those quieter moments, a point in the middle of the year, that invites you to see your life with clearer eyes instead of searching for louder answers. Rather than promising instant change, the sky seems to encourage thoughtful reflection. It offers an opportunity to notice what deserves your attention and what no longer does. You may discover that the understanding you've been searching for isn't something new at all. It may simply be a truth you've carried within yourself, waiting for enough stillness to finally recognize it. Don't expect every insight to arrive as a life-changing revelation. It may come through an unexpectedly comforting conversation, a dream that stays with you after sunrise, or a peaceful feeling that settles in while you're doing something ordinary. Situations that once felt tangled may begin to look surprisingly simple, not because the world has changed overnight, but because your perspective has quietly matured. This is one of those periods when reflection becomes its own kind of guidance. It's as though your inner world begins acting like a clear lake, allowing you to see beneath the surface without the usual distractions. What truly matters becomes easier to recognize, while the expectations you've been carrying for others begin to lose some of their weight. Sometimes the greatest discovery isn't finding a new path, it's realizing you've been walking toward the right one for longer than you knew. Astrology often reminds us that supportive moments don't force transformation upon us. They simply create conditions where growth feels more natural if we're willing to participate. That's why slowing down isn't the opposite of progress. In many seasons of life, it's exactly what allows progress to become visible. If you've recently felt the desire to step back, rethink a decision, or give yourself room to breathe before moving forward, trust that instinct. It may be preparing you rather than delaying you. Life has a way of rewarding attention more than urgency. We often believe every answer must be chased, yet some of the most meaningful ones appear after we stop trying to control every outcome. When you loosen your grip on needing immediate certainty, you create space for wisdom to meet you halfway. Whether you think of that guidance as faith, intuition, or simply the quiet intelligence of lived experience, it often speaks most clearly when the noise begins to settle. Many spiritual traditions express this idea in different ways. The invitation isn't to ignore reason, but to recognize that not every meaningful step can be explained before it's taken. Sometimes your heart senses the direction long before your mind can organize it into certainty. If this week brings gentle moments of reassurance, a quiet confidence, an unexpected sense of peace, or a subtle feeling that you're moving in the right direction, allow yourself to honor them instead of dismissing them. There is remarkable strength in becoming ready without forcing the process. Readiness grows through patience, honest self-reflection, and the willingness to stop measuring yourself against impossible expectations. The three important shifts unfolding during this period aren't rewards handed out for perfection. They're natural responses to the work you've already been doing, as you've chosen honesty over distraction, trust over fear, and calm over constant urgency. The first shift begins where no one else can see it. Before circumstances change, your relationship with yourself begins to soften. The mental noise that has been competing for your attention gradually quiets, making it easier to recognize your own voice beneath old expectations. You may discover that a few peaceful moments alone provide more reassurance than endless searching for outside validation. Sometimes placing a hand over your heart and listening without judgment offers more clarity than any elaborate answer ever could. As that inner steadiness grows, your relationships begin reflecting it. Meaningful connections aren't always dramatic entrances into your life. More often, they're conversations that leave you feeling understood, respected, and surprisingly at ease. Whether this appears through friendship, partnership, mentorship, or a new collaboration, you'll likely recognize it by the sense of comfort it creates, rather than by grand declarations. You won't feel the need to perform or prove yourself. Instead, you'll notice how naturally you can simply be yourself. When your inner world becomes more aligned, your outer world often begins responding in quiet but practical ways. Opportunities may emerge through people who recognize your abilities, projects that finally gain momentum, or decisions that open doors you hadn't noticed before. Rather than feeling like sudden luck, these developments can feel like the natural continuation of work you've been doing beneath the surface all along. Sometimes life doesn't change because everything around you transforms. Sometimes it changes because you've become ready to see and receive what was patiently waiting for your attention. As your inner perspective begins to settle, you may notice changes taking shape in the practical areas of your life as well. Progress doesn't always arrive with fanfare. Sometimes it appears as a conversation that opens a new professional door, recognition you've quietly earned, a project gaining momentum, or a decision that brings greater stability than you expected. Rather than feeling like a sudden stroke of luck, these moments often feel as though they have been growing beneath the surface for quite some time. It's easy to overlook how many unseen choices brought you here. The days you remained committed when no one noticed, the quiet moments when you kept believing despite uncertainty, and the small decisions that reflected your values all become part of the foundation you're standing on now. Life is a remarkable way of responding when your actions begin matching the respect you have for yourself. As your confidence becomes steadier, you often recognize opportunities that were already waiting within reach. There is a quiet balance that develops when effort and trust begin working together instead of pulling against one another. You no longer feel the need to chase every possibility or convince the world of your worth. Instead, you become more selective about where your energy belongs, and that shift alone can change the direction of your path. When you genuinely begin believing that you are enough, your choices naturally start reflecting that belief. In the middle of busy routines, we sometimes forget that meaningful transformation is built through ordinary moments. A few mindful breaths before making a difficult decision, giving someone your full attention, or allowing yourself to believe that the future can unfold differently than the past. These are simple practices, yet they gradually reshape the way you experience life. Small acts of presence often become the beginning of much larger changes. As you reflect on everything we've explored so far, consider which of these changes may have already begun without demanding your attention. Sometimes growth doesn't arrive by knocking loudly at the front door. It reveals itself little by little, becoming visible only after you stop expecting transformation to look dramatic. Like morning fog slowly lifting from a familiar path, what was hidden begins to appear with surprising clarity. Perhaps that's why this season feels different. You may find yourself standing between an older version of your life and one that is still taking shape. While that uncertainty can feel uncomfortable, it also creates space to make more intentional choices. The important question isn't simply where you're headed next, but who you're becoming as you continue walking forward. From an astrological perspective, this period can be viewed as an invitation to redefine what freedom truly means. Rather than escaping responsibilities or making impulsive changes, you may feel drawn toward a quieter form of freedom, the kind that comes from living more honestly with yourself. As you become less attached to controlling every outcome, you create room for new possibilities that feel more aligned with the person you're becoming. If you've been postponing a conversation, holding on to a situation that no longer fits, or hesitating because familiarity feels safer than change, you're certainly not alone. Many of us carry old habits that once protected us, but eventually begin limiting our growth. There comes a point when staying comfortable no longer brings peace. Recognizing that difference is often one of the clearest signs that healing has matured into wisdom. Real healing isn't about becoming emotionally unreachable. It's about becoming truthful with yourself. It asks you to notice which beliefs, relationships, or expectations you've genuinely outgrown and to release them with compassion rather than regret, like carefully pruning a healthy tree so it can continue to flourish. Letting go creates room for stronger, healthier growth in the seasons ahead. One simple exercise may help bring those feelings into focus. Take a few quiet moments to write down the 3 things that feel heaviest in your life right now. They might be situations, routines, or thoughts that continually drain your energy or leave you questioning your own value. Then ask yourself, without judgment, have I already grown beyond this? Am I ready to carry something lighter instead? You don't have to rush the answer. Sometimes asking the question is the first meaningful step. We often focus so much on what we'd like life to bring us that we overlook the importance of creating space to receive it. Growth requires room. New opportunities are difficult to recognize when all of your attention remains tied to what has already completed its purpose. Letting go isn't simply symbolic. It is a practical act of making room for what better reflects the person you are becoming. Peace rarely comes from holding tighter to something that no longer feels right. More often it appears when you trust yourself enough to release what no longer supports your well-being. From that place, you begin making choices that honor your own values rather than old fears. Choosing yourself in this way isn't an act of selfishness. It's a quiet expression of self-respect built through experience. Stories of personal transformation often share this same rhythm. Someone searches tirelessly for answers, only to discover that clarity arrives after they stop forcing every outcome. The breakthrough isn't created by exhaustion. It becomes visible because space has finally been made for it. Whether you see that through faith, reflection, or simply the wisdom that comes with time, the pattern is remarkably familiar. So if this feels like one of those important crossroads, remember that you don't have to rush towards certainty. Sometimes the wisest next step is simply loosening your grip on what is already slipping away and allowing yourself to believe that what lies ahead can be more aligned with who you are today. You don't need every answer before you move forward. You only need enough openness to let peace guide your next decision and enough presence to recognize that your own participation is already shaping what comes next. As July 8 and 9 invite you into a quieter season of reflection, Libra, this isn't simply a time to hope that life will change. It's an invitation to begin living as though you're ready for the next chapter you've been gradually growing toward. Real preparation isn't about controlling every outcome. It's about creating an inner environment where clarity, confidence, and new opportunities have room to take root. The practices that support this moment don't need to be elaborate to be meaningful. Their purpose isn't superstition. They're gentle reminders to slow down and become fully present. You might choose to wear a soft shade of blue as a symbol of calm communication and emotional balance, or keep a piece of moonstone or blue lace agate nearby as a personal reminder to trust your own inner voice. These objects don't create change on their own. They simply help focus your attention on the qualities you're choosing to cultivate within yourself. More important than any symbol is the willingness to pause. Find a few quiet moments where you can step away from distraction and simply listen to your own thoughts without rushing to solve them. Sometimes the most valuable guidance appears only after you created enough silence for it to be heard. In that stillness, your own wisdom often becomes far clearer than the constant noise of daily life. One meaningful exercise for this season is surprisingly simple. Write down 3 things that you began to outgrow, perhaps an old fear, a habit of overthinking, or the pressure to constantly prove your worth. These experiences shaped part of your journey, but that doesn't mean they need to accompany you into the next chapter. Instead of judging them, thank them for what they taught you and acknowledge that their work in your life may be complete. If it feels meaningful to you, fold the paper and safely let it go in a way that symbolizes release, or simply place it somewhere out of sight as a quiet reminder that you're making room for something new. As you do, place your hand over your heart and gently say, "I'm ready to move forward with greater clarity." Those words aren't meant to convince the universe of anything. They're an honest conversation with yourself. Moments like these aren't about gaining control over life. They're about letting go of the need to control everything. There is remarkable strength in reaching a place where you no longer need constant reassurance before taking your next step. You begin recognizing that your value has never depended on outside approval. It has always existed beneath the doubts that gradually taught you to question it. As a symbolic reflection, you might think of this period through the image of the number 9. Rather than predicting a specific outcome, it can represent the completion of one meaningful stage and the quiet readiness to begin another. It reminds us that growth doesn't always mean having every answer. Sometimes it simply means you become more honest with yourself than you were before. When you tell yourself, "I am ready for what aligns with who I'm becoming," you're not trying to force the future into existence. You're acknowledging the person you've already worked so hard to become. The waiting, the uncertainty, the difficult conversations, and the lessons that stretched your patience have all contributed to a stronger foundation. What you're recognizing now isn't perfection, it's readiness. Meaningful change often reveals itself through ordinary moments. Someone spends a quiet evening reflecting in a journal and wakes the next morning with unexpected clarity about an important decision. Another person chooses a peaceful walk instead of another hour of worry and suddenly notices an opportunity that had been overlooked for weeks. These moments may seem small, but they remind us that lasting transformation often begins with a simple decision to become fully present. If these reflections resonate with you, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. You could simply write, "I choose clarity." Sometimes expressing an intention in words helps us recognize the commitment we've already begun making within ourselves. Perhaps the most meaningful realization of this season is that you don't need to become someone completely different to move forward. You may simply be returning to a version of yourself that has always been there beneath expectations, fear, and endless self-criticism. The confidence you're searching for isn't something you have to earn. It's something you gradually remember. That inner return naturally leads to outward action. Over the next several days, consider keeping a small journal where you note meaningful conversations, recurring ideas, vivid dreams, or moments that unexpectedly bring you peace. You may begin noticing patterns that would have been easy to overlook when life felt rushed. Reflection has a way of revealing connections that only become visible with time. Your body deserves that same thoughtful attention. A quiet morning walk, gentle stretching, or simply sitting outside for a few minutes while paying attention to your breathing can become powerful reminders that you're fully present in your own life. The body carries the stories of everything you endured, but it also carries an incredible capacity to recover, adapt, and begin again. Finally, bring that same clarity into your practical world. Review your commitments, your schedule, and your finances without judgment or pressure. Notice where your energy is producing meaningful returns and where it continues to drain away. Just as your time and attention reflect your priorities, your resources can also become expressions of intentional living. When your choices begin aligning with your values, steady progress often follows in ways that feel both natural and deeply earned. As you continue forward, don't forget to care for your heart as intentionally as you care for your goals. Kindness doesn't always require dramatic gestures or life-changing moments to matter. Sometimes it's as simple as sending a sincere message of appreciation to someone who helped shape your life, not to revisit the past or reopen old chapters, but to acknowledge the goodness they brought into your journey and allow gratitude to move freely. Those quiet moments of generosity often create space for new experiences in ways we don't immediately recognize. They soften the parts of us that have become guarded and remind us that giving thanks is not about looking backward. It's about moving forward with a lighter heart. The choices you're making now may seem small, yet they carry remarkable influence over the life you're gradually building. Every thoughtful decision, every healthy boundary, every moment you choose self-respect over self-doubt, becomes another seed planted for the future. Those choices may not transform everything overnight, but over time, they begin to shape your habits, your confidence, and the way you respond to new opportunities. You're creating a life that depends less on outside approval and more on an inner confidence that continues to grow with experience. Real confidence isn't born from getting everything right. It grows from remembering your own worth, even while you're still learning, adjusting, and discovering new parts of yourself along the way. Life occasionally unfolds with a timing that's difficult to explain. You may remember moments when help appeared just as hope was beginning to fade, or when an unexpected conversation changed the direction of an entire season. Perhaps it was a chance encounter, a simple invitation, or a piece of advice that stayed with you long after the words were spoken. Whether you see those moments as grace, faith, coincidence, or simply the kindness of others, they remind us that we are often more supported than we realize. Sometimes all we need is a quiet reminder that we haven't been walking this path alone, even during the chapters that felt the loneliest. Perhaps that's the message worth carrying with you now. You don't have to prove that you're deserving before you begin again. The opportunity to move forward isn't reserved for a future version of yourself who has everything figured out. It belongs to the person you've already become through every challenge, every disappointment, and every lesson you've had the courage to face. New beginnings rarely announce themselves with fireworks. More often, they begin with a simple decision to say yes to the next honest step, even when that step feels small. Like the first light of morning gradually filling a landscape, meaningful change often becomes visible only after you've already started moving toward. If the past few months have left you questioning your direction, remember that uncertainty doesn't erase progress. Growth is rarely a straight line, and periods of reflection are often just as valuable as periods of visible achievement. You've continued showing up, even when results were slow or invisible. That perseverance matters more than you may realize because it has quietly strengthened your resilience. The path you've been hoping to find may not be something entirely new. It may simply become visible now because you're seeing yourself with greater clarity than before. Sometimes the greatest breakthrough is not discovering a different road, but recognizing the value of the one you've been walking all along. As we've explored these reflections together, One theme has appeared again and again. Meaningful change begins within. Greater self-understanding creates stronger relationships because people respond differently when you show up with authenticity instead of self-doubt. Stronger relationships encourage healthier opportunities, opening doors that are built on trust rather than constant effort to prove yourself. And practical progress often follows when your choices become more aligned with your values. None of these developments require perfection. They ask only for honesty, patience, and the willingness to keep growing, even when the progress feels gradual. Lasting transformation is rarely dramatic. It is usually the quiet accumulation of small choices made consistently over time. So let me leave you with one question to carry into the days ahead. Are you ready to trust the person you've been becoming? Not because every doubt has disappeared, but because you learned that confidence often grows while we're taking the next step, not before it. The next chapter doesn't ask you to become someone else or leave your past behind completely. It simply invites you to continue becoming more fully yourself, bringing forward the wisdom you've earned, while leaving behind the fears that no longer need to lead the way. If this reflection resonated with you, I'd love to hear from you in the comments. You might simply write, "I choose to move forward with clarity." Sometimes putting that intention into words becomes more than a comment. It becomes a quiet promise to yourself. A reminder that every meaningful journey begins with one conscious decision and is strengthened each time you choose to honor it. Thank you for spending this time here. I hope these reflections offered a little more perspective, encouragement, and peace as you move through July 8 and 9. If this message brought you value, consider supporting the channel through the link in the description or the QR code on your screen. Your kindness helps us continue creating thoughtful astrology content for this community, allowing these conversations to reach others who may also be searching for clarity during an important season of their lives. Every gesture of support, no matter how small, is genuinely appreciated. As you step back into your day, carry what truly resonated with you. Let it shape a conversation you've been meaning to have, inspire a page in your journal, encourage a quiet morning walk, or simply remind you to meet yourself with a little more compassion than you did yesterday. Allow these reflections to become part of the choices you make, not because they promise certainty, but because they encourage greater awareness of what already feels true within you. Sometimes the most meaningful turning points begin so quietly that we only recognize them after we've already started walking. Until next time, take good care of yourself and keep moving forward with curiosity, balance, confidence, and the quiet trust that every thoughtful step you take today is helping shape the life you're gradually growing into.